And now, live from the Cable Center in Denver, Colorado, WICT Rocky Mountain is proud to present their 25th anniversary celebration, featuring a panel of renowned women in the industry who will be sharing their pearls of wisdom. Please welcome WICT Rocky Mountain President, Barbara Nelms.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to see you in person at the Cable Center here in Denver, Colorado. Also, I want to thank you and welcome those of you joining us streaming live via YouTube platform. We want to extend a huge thanks to our partners and sponsor, Concentrix, who sponsored our live stream today. I am Barbara Nelms, President of the Rocky Mountain WICT chapter. On behalf of myself and our chapter vice president, Camilla Formica, we want to welcome you to one of our first in-person events, indoors, in the last 18 months. I want to thank Camilla, Brandy Brown, Gina Stanley, Jamie Lyons, Rocky Garcia, and all of our volunteers today for putting this amazing event together. They have spent hours making sure you all have a fabulous time today. So please give them a round of applause. Throughout the year, we have been highlighting pearls of wisdom from the last 25 years of the Rocky Mountain chapter. We have heard from past presidents, from Women of the Year, and many others who have been integral in making our chapter one of the most successful chapters in the country and now the globe. WICT Rocky Mountain has always been filled with creative and groundbreaking women. Some of the women that we have highlighted this year include Shannon Saviors from Sancherry Associates. She's here today. Rachel Beisel, formerly from Cable Labs. Stacy Adams from Comcast, who is on our board. Dana Phillip Crandall from Comcast, our Woman of the Year this year. Maria Popo, Stanford Distinguished Career Institute. And Catherine Kilstrom from Comcast, who is here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All this goes to say that we in the Rocky Mountain region are incredibly proud of the women and men that represent us. Today, we are lucky enough to have a number of those people joining us in the room. I acknowledge all of you who are here. And our exceptional panel on stage is made up of amazing women who will share their wisdom through their unique lens and perspective based on where they are in their career. This panel is led by our former president and newly minted class of 2021 cable pioneer, Tracy Baumgartner. Tracy considers herself a cable lifer and even met her husband, Light Reading's Jeff Baumgartner, at a cable event. They are unique because they are one of the few cable pioneer husband and women teams.
Yay.
Tracy has been in communications and corporate responsibility with the Comcast family of companies for over 20 years. Let's welcome Tracy to introduce the panel today.
Wow, thank you, Barb. I should take you with me everywhere. That'll be my entrance walking into the room. It's so nice to be in a room with other humans, and I will note that we are all dressed, including nice pants and shoes or a skirt, not what we normally see of each other from here up. For those of you who are joining us remotely, we're glad to have you with us. I hope you are super comfortable in your shorts or little pants or whatever you have going on at home. Wish you could be here with us, but glad you're here getting some of the pearls from these amazing, amazing women that I'm going to have the opportunity to talk to, learn a little bit about where they are, different backgrounds, different points of time in their career, different experiences they're bringing to the table. But one of the great things about WICT is that's who we are. We're all from different places, different walks of life, different points in our journey, and we're all committed to making each other better. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to introduce formally these amazing women. Here to my left is Charlene Emery. After about 10 years in the entertainment industry in LA, she's moved here to Denver, and she's been at Charter for now almost 4 years. She started as a project manager on the video product team and is now a senior design producer within the digital platforms agency. She's on a number of nonprofit boards, including WICT Rocky Mountain, and she's the general programming chair. She's noted in her biography, her main goal is to bring people together to network, help build skills, and grow in their professional and personal lives. This is Charlene. Maria Rothschild here. Maria's career, that's okay, we're gonna have fun today. Let's hear it. Maria's career began writing for a TV and cable industry publication, but she didn't tell us which one. You wanna tell?
Warren Publishing.
Warren Publishing, excellent. She's been in telecommunications ever since with US West, Media One, Adelphia, Charter, Comcast. She's worked for technology startup Cold Spark, Mutable, and is now the principal at Slalom, focusing on cloud technologies. All right. She's led teams of product management, program management, agile development, engineering, and process engineering, involved with lots of organizations, including our very own WICT Rocky Mountain, Adaptive Spirit, Rocky Mountain Cable Association, and on Comcast's Women in Technology. Her passion is to get more women in the technology sector. So, Maria, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Got an interesting road traveled we're going to talk about. Okay. To Maria's left is Channing Jones, the Chief Diversity and Social Responsibility Officer for CSG. She worked, let's hear it. She's working across the company to promote and build effective strategies for equity, diversity, and inclusion, responsible for environmental, societal, and governance initiatives, which I'm 100% behind, and is looking to drive voices and ideas, aligning culture, value, and missions. Prior to CSG, she directed DE&I strategy, operations, and outcomes at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. She's worked as a diversity lead and strategic planner for the U.S. Department of State and diversity recruitment and asset manager for the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. So you've got some nice perspectives to bring to the table today. She's committed to growing and sustaining inclusive and equitable workplace cultures. So that's Channing. Okay, Kath. Prior to her retirement in 2019, the fabulous Kathy Kilstrom was the Senior Vice President leading Net Promoter System deployment for Comcast Business Partners Worldwide. When I had the pleasure of working with her, she was the Senior Vice President of Customer Care for Comcast West Division. Her career has spanned more than 30 years in telecom, including leadership roles at AT&T Broadband, and US West. She's been honored with, I could list for the next hour, all of the amazing honors that she has, Cablefax, Woman of the Year, Most Powerful Women, Wonder Woman, Woman of the Year for WICT Rocky Mountain, former WICT Rocky Mountain president. And I'm going to say she has a passion for developing women leaders who will transform this industry, and was honored as WICT Rocky Mountain's Lifetime Achievement in 2019. So, Kathy Kilstrom.
Thank you.
All right, this is a panel of women with experience and pearls to share. So everybody gets the first question. I just read your bios as we talk about ourselves on paper, and that's great. But I'd like an inside view of your careers, how you would describe it, perhaps to a friend over a glass of wine. And as you're talking about it, somewhere in this story, you had a change, a promotion. You learned something that has affected the way you do everything else the rest of your career. And so I'd like to hear your pearl as you tell your career story. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I'll go.
All right, Maria.
What you don't know about my career, well, you probably all know, but it's bounced around a lot, even within the same industry. And, you know, where I started in publishing and then went into product management, then got very deep into video, and then moved to Comcast. It was in deployment. You know, so it's moved around a lot. And I feel like what I've learned from that is to really know what your strength is, and to learn what that is if you're, you know, moving through your career. Knowing your strength, and then when you get somewhere, I don't know if anybody's been reorged and just woke up one day and decided, you know, and was like, oh, yay, I didn't get cut, but where am I, right? So knowing your strength is the way that you can navigate through that, Because if you're somewhere where that's not being valued, then you need to go somewhere else. And I feel like that's been my learning.
That's amazing. Kath?
Yeah, I'll be happy to go next. You did a great job of kind of summing up my career, but I have had over 30 years of experience in voice, data, and video communications. Now it's been on different infrastructure and different companies with increasing levels of responsibility in everything from sales and marketing to strategic planning, mergers and acquisitions, and my favorite, customer care operations. So I've been very fortunate, but early on in my career, the inside story is, as a single mom, I knew that the time away from my 2 daughters was very precious to me. And so I knew I had to make X plus. In fact, I also knew I wanted a career and not a job. And I have many people along the way to thank from the standpoint of leaders, mentors, colleagues, that really helped me navigate through all of this. I did have senior level leadership positions at US West, then Quest, AT&T Broadband, and then Comcast. My learning along the way that really had an impact and probably a tipping point for me has a story with it. So the story is, this is at the time of the merger of, well, actually acquisition, Comcast of AT&T Broadband. And I elected to stay with Comcast. I loved the leadership. I didn't have a better plan for myself at the time. And I wanted to see how this turned out. And so I stayed. And part of my leadership responsibility on the West Division senior team was to participate in monthly operations reviews. Those operations reviews were with each of the regions. And it was a nice 9.5-hour day with each of the regions. Many of you have probably participated in these. And my first session with the new division president at the helm, I thought went quite well. However, he expressed his disappointment in me right after the meetings, telling me that I just wasn't tough enough. It wasn't what he expected. He expected me to be tougher on those calls. So needless to say that, since I've been working on criticism since I was a small child, accepting it graciously, that hit me really hard. So I went home and slept on it, maybe didn't sleep at all, to be truthful about it, really wondering, did I make the right decision to stay? And is this really going to be the place for me? And can I be successful? And I actually went to his office before 7 the next morning, and he was gracious enough to move aside what he was doing and sit and talk with me. And what I wanted to do with him, and I told him straight up, is I really need to level set with you. I need to level set on expectations. I said, because I feel terrible that you were disappointed in me. I don't want that to happen. However, I think that it could continue to happen because that isn't the way I get work done, by being tough on people or by ambushing or sideswiping someone on a senior leadership call. I said, I work with these people every day, the vice presidents of customer care, and I would lose credibility with them, and they would lose some credibility or at least damage their credibility with the rest of the new senior leadership team that they're exposed to. The good news is that I was working for an enlightened leader who listened to me carefully and allowed me to, once I said, hey, I'm going to get the results, I will acknowledge any areas for improvement and have plans for that improvement. But he gave me the wide side of the field and said, okay, you do it your way. And he let me do that. That led to a tremendous partnership and a leader that I continue to miss to this day. So my pearl from all of that is be courageous, just be fearless, and stay true to yourself in the process. And if that means recalibrating on expectations or whatever that means, just be brave enough to have those moments, because for me that was a turning point. Otherwise, I thought I might not fit with this new organization.
Wow, thanks, Kath. Okay, which one of you wants to follow Kath?
Those are really big shoes to fill, Kath, but I'll go ahead. kind of summarize my career, I will say, my love for diversity and equity and inclusion really was born out of a desire and love for people and culture, language, belief systems. I think that, if we spent more time learning who people are and what they value, then a lot of our challenges when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion really wouldn't be challenges, and we think of them as opportunities. This started when I was in high school. I called the first sit-in my school to talk about race and sexism and homophobia and every type of ism when I was 15. And I've been loving the work ever since. That we created the first Students for Cultural Awareness group that still exists today at that school. And I knew that I wanted to do something where I was creating environments where people could be authentic and where everyone could thrive. So that really led me to, pursue a career in what I thought was going to be public service. I'm from the DC area, so my career really started in DC. And at the time, President Obama had, an executive order that really pushed diversity and inclusion strategies across the federal government. And so that's where I really was able to kind of meet this kind of academic and personal passion with work. And it was really fantastic. A lot of the focus was on women in STEM and mission critical occupations at the time, some major skill gaps in STEM that we had in the federal government that we just weren't meeting. And it was really fantastic, but I knew that what I wanted to be when I grew up was a U.S. ambassador, and so that's what led me to the State Department, working in our anti-human trafficking unit, which was incredible. It was a really exciting part of my career. I was a strategic planner, and then really was the first D&I lead, really at the State Department, because they didn't have those roles at the time, and it was fantastic. And I started to see on the ground in our diplomacy efforts, there was really a lack of effectiveness because we didn't have an appreciation and understanding of values and culture in other countries. So I was working in Malawi at the time, and I felt like all of the expats lived behind walls, and we were all friends with each other, and we ate with each other. We were eating American food, and really bad American food. And I thought, like, this isn't how I want to work. This isn't what I'm trying to accomplish. So that really then caused a shift. I thought, the way to really influence the world is really through either finance and technology or the intersection of both. And so then I kind of merged my career into financial services. I didn't stray too far from the government with the Federal Reserve Bank. It wasn't a big stretch. It really felt like I was still in the government. But it was really great to really lead that work and being able to bring in social impact and economic inclusion, which I really love. But it just wasn't enough. I wasn't able to be as creative, move at a pace as fast as technology. And that's what really led me to CSG, to really become their first chief diversity officer, build an entire DEI function and team while also leading social impact, environmental sustainability with ESG. So it's all very new. It's new, which is exciting and challenging and fun all at the same time. But what I think was the pearl that I've recently identified that was the thread between all of those experiences was very similar to what you were talking about, Kath, and it was really around aligning my values with these experiences. So I don't look at jobs as jobs or really even think about a career. I really think about it as life experience. And every few seasons, I realign my value system, and I actually write my value statements down. And first I was really aligning my life to these values, but I realized I did have to align my work to them too. And that's been what's carried me through is, if I'm in a season of learning, I believe in lifelong learning. So I need to be in an environment where I can learn and be challenged in a healthy way. I really believe in inclusive workspaces and the ability to fail fast. So I needed to be in that type of environment. And to be honest, the Fed just wasn't that environment. I loved it, but it just wasn't that environment. And so that's how I've tried to intentionally make those decisions for myself. And in my interviews, I do ask those questions. I think when we're in job interviews, we're interviewing those companies too. And if the values don't align, then it doesn't matter what the role is, I'm not going to take it.
That's a great pearl. Thank you.
That leaves me.
That leaves you.
So, as Tracy mentioned, I started my career in the entertainment industry. I lived in LA for nearly a decade after my undergraduate degree, and I found a passion for volunteering, for philanthropy, so I spent a lot of time with low-income students, mentoring them, helping them with projects, things like that. And I kind of just decided LA wasn't really the place for me. So I moved to Denver, and I've been here for almost 4 years now. And in my first role at Charter, I was in my role for about 1.5 years. I kind of realized that volunteerism is something that resonated more with me, and I needed to have it more in my day-to-day. So I started looking at different organizations and departments within Charter that have more of that social impact. Examples being corporate social responsibility, accessibility, and I started having conversations with people in these teams just to understand what their teams do, what their role is, and once I was able to find a team that I felt aligned with my skill sets and values, I started creating stronger relationships with people in those organizations. And those relationships helped me land a job within the digital products and technology design agency, it's a mouthful, where I get to work with our accessibility architect every single day, almost every day. And that helps me feel like I'm bringing value and purpose to what I do. So these different experiences, moving, finding a new job, these are things, my pearl of wisdom coming out of those is if you want to do something, just do it. Just go for it. Because life doesn't wait for you. You always hear about people saying, I wish I could go back to school. I wish I could move. I wish I could travel. And the fact of the matter is you can. You just have to be intentional with your decisions and your actions and just go for it.
These are great. These are great. These ladies are giving us pearls. That's terrific. I want to talk about connection. WICT as a touchstone around connecting with others. I think it's very clear in this industry in particular, connections really matter. So I want to talk about it from a lot of different perspectives on connections because we all have different relationships that are driving us in different ways. So Maria, I want to start with you and talk about mentoring. And mentoring is, I think, the thing that people are most familiar with, most comfortable with, most understanding of, but I'd love for you to explain, give us an example from your life of a mentorship relationship, why it mattered, and what wisdom you would share with others, either to develop a mentoring relationship, to pursue one, to benefit one, to be a mentor themselves.
So I told you this, I could talk about mentoring all day because I get so much out of it. It's probably my favorite aspect of my career, my business job. But I think of it in a sort of a framework, and I'll explain. I think there's a very casual level of mentoring where many of you don't even know you're mentoring somebody, but they're taking away something from you as either a role model or something that you said that inspired them, and you're mentoring them, and you don't even know it. And I have people I am still grateful to that don't even know who I am, but I heard them and they impacted my life. The second level is more of a casual mentoring where you are talking to somebody and they're seeking out your advice. I think that's one we're more familiar with. A third level, I think, is, where you're assigned a mentor. And I have one now from Comcast, which, I'm pretty sure she was supposed to drop me when I left, but we still talk every other week. And in those conversations, what I ask her to do is look for disconnects between who you think you are and what people perceive you to be. Because if there's a disconnect, that's a problem. And you either can correct it or you can't, but that's an important piece of what we talk about. I'd say there's another 2 levels here, and I don't think we do enough to accomplish that. And the next level is sponsor. And this is somebody who goes around and says, do you know Charlene? Do you know Charlene? She's awesome. She's awesome. And whoever you want to connect with, you just let me know and I will connect them. Last level, and this is one we really, really need to get to, is champion. And this is the person that not just connects, but really focuses on developing and making sure that this woman or man is successful in either their organization or whatever organization they want to be in. You're a backstop, but you're also forward talking and communicating about the strengths and the wonder that is Channing. So That's the way I think about it. As far as connecting, I think there's my least favorite one is the forced sort of connection one. I don't know if there's WICT programs that do that, but sometimes they don't work. So I think of more from a mentor perspective. You look for somebody who has complementary skills to you and that you want to become more like. Not somebody that's completely different or you don't know. And give it time.
You still have a mentor,
Yeah,
and you mentor.
yeah.
How do you find the people you mentor? Now, we have a lot of seasoned people in the room who have lots of pearls to share. How would you recommend they engage in a mentoring relationship?
I think you start at that casual level and you find somebody that just needs your help, whatever level of help that they need it at. I was assigned Brecca, and we just enjoy each other. I tell her this all the time. I get more out of talking to her than I'm sure she gets out of hearing from me. But it's because of her perspective and her fresh take on something. And sometimes it's a little bit of a, Maria, you just said that to her and you're not practicing what you even just preached. So, little reminder back to me. So, yeah.
So Shirley, let me ask you a question about mentoring. So you're younger in your career than some of the other folks on the stage. When you think about mentoring, how important is that to you? Is it super important? Are you actively seeking mentors out? Is it, hey, it'd be great if it came along? What's kind of your thought in your stage of your career?
Yeah, I absolutely value mentorship. One of my mentors and sponsors is here right in front of me, and it's wonderful. It's having these connections and networks to make sure that you have the people there to support you, to introduce you to people. I don't say I actively seek mentorship, but I have been part of the WICT mentorship program, and I still keep connections with people who I know I can bounce ideas off of and ask for advice. So it's hugely important to me.
So I'll tell you on the other side, I have a reverse mentor relationship where I actively sought out a younger person who's a little more hip, a little more in touch with things, and certainly much more technologically savvy than I am. And that relationship for me has been really, really fulfilling. And yes, I will offer him some mentorship opportunity as well. But we really spend like equal time. It's very focused on, this is what I'm working on, I need your perspective on. And so just something to think about from a mentorship perspective, are you looking always all directions? Kath, I want to talk to you about sponsorship, in particular coming out of what Maria teed up. When you think about all the relationships you've had as a senior leader, there's sponsorship of others, there's sponsorship at the peer level. These are the people that are in the room when you're not. These are the people who can make or break initiative you want to launch, a budget you want to pass, a person you want to promote. Can you talk about those peer sponsors that have to be able to carry some water for you, and how do you navigate that relationship?
Sure, I'll be happy to talk about it. I think for me, mentoring's always been extremely important, but taking it up a notch to the sponsorship level, or in this case, the partnership level, really, with peers, became really critical to me in my career. It was fundamental to my success and the success of my team. A great example would be finance. The head of finance, my peer leading finance, extremely intelligent, extremely competent, knew his stuff far better than I knew his arena, but yet I knew I needed to be in lockstep with him to be successful. Think about it, when revenues aren't where they should be, where do they come? They look at reducing cost in operations, right? Many of us here have been to that bad party. So in establishing those kinds of connections, which I'd like to think of almost more as partnership, that requires a level of vulnerability and definitely authenticity to approach someone who, you sometimes feel like you're at odds with each other. So I had great success in taking those steps to have that difficult conversation, understanding where that person, the CFO, was coming from. What was he trying to accomplish? And let him know what I'm trying to accomplish. And then how can we get there together? I even went so far as to say we can hurt each other in the process, right? Or we can find a way to go there together and be mutually successful. Those conversations worked out really well. And being vulnerable and saying, you've got this expertise, I don't. And it would always end up in a conversation with, in this case, him saying to me, and you know how to do this, and I'm working on this as a leader. And those relationships really saved the day, especially, as you said, Tracy, when, I'm not in the room and he is maybe talking with the president and representing an opinion on my area of the business. How great to have him as an advocate. So that was an important step for me to take with almost all of my peers on the senior leadership team. And it's a different kind of relationship, very fulfilling and two-way.
For sure. It's interesting. We talk about who's on your team, and most people think about, okay, it's who do I report up and down? That's my team.
It's a
The
cross.
team is the cross. Who do I work with? How do we work together to drive things through? So two different ways to think about teams. So one other thing I want to talk about, something happens when you've been in a gig for a while and you start building these relationships with people, and then you change jobs, you change functions, you leave, but you keep the people. Because there are some people that go beyond simply a mentor or a colleague. They really become part of that tribe that goes with you. And I would love to hear a little bit, Channing, about, I know this is something as relevant to your personal board of directors that you have. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think it's so important.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think early on I realized, the model that companies, nonprofits have around board of advisors, board of directors makes a lot of sense when you think about the role of a board. And I thought, well, we should all have that individually for ourselves. And, I look at my board of advisors as a very diverse group of people. I think it is a mixture of mentors, but also sponsors. I think, especially for women and women of color, sponsorship can really make or break your experience professionally. And to have an advocate when you're not in the room and when you're not at the table is really important. But I also, I have like a spiritual advisor on my board. I've got, life advisors. My therapist, I consider her as a member of my board of advisors. And then, yeah, it's important, I agree. And you really have this network of people that I think have to include different genders, different backgrounds, different industries, who can really help and advise you, whether they're there as a sounding board or more action-oriented. And so that's been really helpful. I think when you do transition to a new career or a new industry, a new role, it can feel so lonely at first. And when you have that board of advisors, it's always a sense of community because you're rebuilding that community in a new role. And as a leader, you really want to make sure that your team feels like they have a sense of belonging and community. So you're trying to find a community for yourself while building it for others. So having that consistent board that carries with you is really critical and has been really beneficial to me, especially in those moments where you feel really isolated. And when you're new, that first kind of 1 to 3 years sometimes can be very lonely and challenging. And so it's been helpful. And the board has to evolve over time. I've realized too, now being in executive leadership, I have a different set of needs and desires than I had earlier on in my career. And that's been different. Also, different industry. I'm like, if anyone wants to join my board who is, telco experience, please let me know because I'm new to this world, right? I didn't, I'm like, cable. I'm like, is that like Comcast? I'm like, that's all I know, So, and it does evolve and you kind of have your core 3 or 4 maybe who stay with you. But it's been really helpful.
Those are the people that pick up the phone no matter what when you
No
call.
matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what time of day, personal or professional, that's really it. And you can be authentic and raw and real.
Absolutely. So all of these connections are so important. But sometimes there's a person we really need to support us and tell our story, and that's ourselves. And self-advocacy is really, really hard. Charlene, I know you have a perspective on self-advocacy.
Yeah, I advocate for myself all the time. You all advocate for yourself all the time, whether you know it or not. One small example was yesterday I volunteered at the WICT Rocky Mountain golf tournament. And I met dozens of people, many of which I see in the crowd today. A lot of people I met for the first time, many of which I have been working with virtually for the last year and a half. And those relationships are key to self-advocacy, building your network. You talked about sponsorship and mentorship. Those people are the people who are going to help you push you in your career, in your skill sets. And you have to make sure you have conversations with these people. What you want to do with your career, your goals, how you want to grow. Because if you have a conversation with your boss about what your goals are, then he or she will know. If they don't know what your goals are, where you want to go with your career, and they have an opportunity, they may not think of you. They may pass you up for someone who has had that conversation. So make sure that you are your own biggest cheerleader.
I think that's true. A pearl that's similar to that from a good friend of mine in the room, it's just very straightforward. Don't ask, don't get. You know? If you don't put it out there, people aren't going to just know that you're interested in that. Don't ask, don't get. You got to put it out there. You got to put it out there. Does this resonate? Anybody?
I think one thing I learned recently was asking. It's not easy to do. And then when I found out everybody likes to be asked, it's a compliment. If I ask somebody, I just don't know what to do, what do you think? I'm giving them that they have the expertise and I trust and value their opinion. I never thought of it that way, but asking, because asking seems like, men asking for directions, I can't do that. Now we all have GPS. But asking for help or advice or a job, just seemed like not something you're supposed to do. And I found very much the opposite, that people were so willing to help. It's a compliment.
I would have to chime in too and agree with that. I think if you have a clear sense of where you're going and what you want to do, and you're willing to share that with someone, I have always been surprised at how that person will rally and step up and want to help you. And suddenly you have someone else that has almost a stake in your success. It's very empowering, very elevating, and I've kind of leaned on that all my career and found the benefit from that.
It is hard, though.
Yeah.
You
Why
know,
is it
it's
hard?
I think a lot of times we're socialized not to advocate for ourselves and to talk about ourselves. I mean, even before job interviews, I'm literally having to practice, remember the things that you did, having to ask other people, remember the accomplishments. Or years ago, I started something called a Love Me file. I update it quarterly. When I'm really on top of it, I update it monthly, but I don't have time to do that. But it's the accomplishments. I just pop them into that file. I note them so that I can remember, whether it's for a performance review or you're updating your resume or you need a pearl of wisdom for a panel. It's really nice to have because that talk track of self-advocacy can be really difficult, especially if you were raised in a household or culture where you're told you don't talk about yourself, you don't tout yourself, you don't toot your own horn, you should lead, humbly, and advocating for yourself has nothing to do with humility, and I think sometimes those two things can feel conflicting, and so I think it can be really hard, and it takes practice.
Yeah. I'd like a Love Me file.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's one we can all take back and start.
That's so much better than accomplishments.
Right?
Well, and I think you could get it out when you get at those times, those terrible times when you're in your own head, asking yourself, are you smart enough? Are you good enough? Should you be here or should you be somewhere else? I get out the Love Me file.
Yes, and I keep it on my desktop. It's not like, I know we're supposed to be on the cloud, in the sky, but when I turn on my computer and I see it, that helps me because it's right there. It's the only folder. I don't think I have any other folders on my desktop, but that one. And so it's reminding me every day, don't forget, I'm here. I'm here. Don't ignore me.
That's a perfect transition, because on one end of the continuum is self-advocacy. The other end is the dreaded imposter syndrome.
Oh, gosh.
And everybody faces this at some point in their career. Not everybody is willing to talk about it, right? Because that's the point of being my imposter. I'm certainly not going to say that out loud. But when we were talking, getting ready for this panel, and I brought this topic up, there were lots of heads nodding, going, has anybody ever felt this? And everybody goes up. So Channing, I know you had like the most vigorous reaction to imposter syndrome.
Oh my gosh, yes, like every day. And I think people are surprised when I say that, but as I mentioned, I am in a new role, a new function as a Chief Diversity Officer, reporting to our CEO, which, when you look at the foundations of DEI, what you should be doing, these are all the right things, right? We're putting our money where our mouth is. But when you've kind of been like othered your whole life, I'm always the youngest person, I'm typically the only Black woman in the room, I'm the one that doesn't have children, or the one who's single, you're kind of like, you're checking those boxes like, okay, I'm not like them in that, or, I'm trying to get in this conversation and like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. And like, no, like I don't vacation in Aspen. I'm choosing Aspen because we're in Colorado. I'm not from here. But, you do get in your head a bit. And those things at the end of the day have nothing to do with your ability to do your role and to do your job effectively. But they do have everything to do with the social dynamics of the environment that you're in. And so, and Cindy can tell you, Cindy's on my team, it's a daily struggle talking life and affirming yourself constantly. And you want to perform, you want to outperform. Everyone says fail fast. It's this culture of taking risks, but like nobody wants to fail, really. We don't want to do a not so great job. And so that's challenging. I think like the turnover rate for Chief Diversity Officers on average is like 2 years. It's a really tough space. Oh, wow. And so what I found is like building a community and network of other Chief Diversity Officers who face similar challenges is really important to me. Having a network of executive Black women is really important to me. There are some situations and circumstances that like we only understand because we're in them. And that has been really helpful, but I think you're always developing throughout every stage of your career. So now I'm in the space of find my voice, own my voice, I'm meant to be at the table, constantly reminding myself of that and trying to celebrate even the little wins. When I get an email, where someone tells me, I felt really seen with that event, like I've never felt seen before. That's it for me. I'm like, I dropped the mic, my job is done, I'm so happy. It's not necessarily the huge, big, D&I award online. It's those moments where you realize your work is really impacting people, and it's just constantly reminding myself of that.
That's so important. That's so important. One of the things we'll hear from people in that imposter syndrome is, fake it till you make it, you're fine. Is that the right piece of advice to give people, or is there something we should be saying differently?
I think there's more.
Yeah.
I think it's more in your head than fake it till you make it, right? It's not fake it till you make it. It's more about telling yourself, the imposter syndrome is a thought distortion, right? It's something that goes in and it starts to worm its way through your brain, and you self get obsessed with it, right? So I'm an English major and I play an engineer on TV. I used to say that all the time, because I was in video. So I once, at Comcast, I had a team, and this guy came up to me and goes, I didn't know you weren't an engineer. And I felt so proud. I faked it. No, but no. What I did was I tried to be not an engineer, but complement the engineers by understanding what the benefits of the technology were, because sometimes they didn't know. What was the customer going to do with it, and what was it? Where did it fit in the context of our goals and alignment? So I think it's not. I think fake it till you make it kind of makes sense. Like it kind of helps to get it out of your brain, because then you're at least focused on faking it. but it's really in you. It's not not everybody thinks you're an imposter. In fact, nobody does.
Channing and I had talked about some of these lines earlier, right? And, you know, you hear the never let them see you sweat. Well, it's hard not to sweat when you don't know your subject matter, right? So faking it till you make it is, to me, kind of a difficult hurdle. And authenticity is really what resonates with me. And while that may be uncomfortable in the beginning to not be fully prepared or fully versed in a certain subject matter or an expert in a certain field, I think sometimes admitting that and then seeking knowledge or partnership with people that are, it can be the more powerful resolution to that sort of a concept of faking it till you make it. It just feels more genuine and certainly more sustainable.
So how do we move past it? How do we stop thinking it and just own being in the room? So, Charlene, I know you weren't even feeling super comfortable about the panel.
Yeah.
How did you work past that?
Yeah.
Because you totally belong to be here.
Yeah, I'm feeling imposter syndrome right now. I don't feel like I belong on the stage with these incredibly accomplished women, but someone felt like I belonged here, even if I didn't believe it. So what I want to tell everyone is if you're open to an opportunity, if you're seeking an opportunity, just say yes. You'll figure out the confidence piece later. I'm doing that right now.
Not shaking or anything. You're doing good.
Well, you belong here. I
You
think
do.
that's the other piece too, is making sure that we, especially women, affirm that we belong in the spaces that we're in. And I agree with you. The faking is just, it's exhausting. You get so tired. And it is about authenticity. And I think if you fake, you really can't perform as well. So when you're always, worried about the shoe dropping, it's this implicit kind of thought that you're not good enough.
Right.
And I think once we do the self-work to believe we are good enough, then we don't have to fake it because we really do believe it. And some of that's a mixture of our own stuff, but also the communities that we're in who can reaffirm, like, no, Charlene, you belong right here. There's nowhere else you need to be.
Yeah.
That's it.
If I can share another anecdote, when I was in my first role at Charter, within that first year and a half I was at Charter, I did not feel like I was performing. I was brand new to technology, I was brand new to product, I had no idea what I was doing, and I honestly thought, I was like, my boss is gonna fire me, I'm just not doing well. And I ended up getting an award. He was like telling me how great I was doing, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I belonged in that role. I belong on the stage. You all belong in the boardroom or the meeting with everyone who's higher up than you. You all belong. So just say yes.
I love that. And I'm going to share one more from a pearl of wisdom about being at the table. So sometimes you're a more junior exec, or your perception is that you shouldn't be in the room at the meeting. So, sometimes there'll be a center table and then the chairs around. So I plopped myself
It's a
comfortably
kids' table.
in one of the kids' table chairs, and I was happy to be there. I was happy to be invited, and one of the SVPs came in, a woman, put her hand under my elbow and said, "Get up, go sit at the table. You are supposed to be here. We want to hear your opinion." During the meeting, we're talking, there was something that I had mentioned, and I might have been over-talked a little bit, and she stopped, and she said, "Wait, I want to hear what Tracy has to say." The power that you all have at any moment to make someone feel they belong, I want to know what you have to say, you are here. It was such a little thing for her to do, and it was enormous for me. So please take that opportunity to get people to the center of the room, to make sure if they are brave enough to speak up and say something, that they get to say their whole thought, because you have so much power when you do. So much power. All right, I want to talk about knowing yourself, what you stand for, and where you're headed. And to me, part of that is being the master and planner of your career. So Channing, you've talked a little bit about aligning your values. I want to do something like this, and then going after it. There's some master planner skill set in doing that. And Charlene, I know that is something that you do. Can you talk about active choices and planning, and how do you navigate from here to there and the steps along the way?
Yeah. So I talked a little bit earlier about being intentional with your decisions and your actions. I recently finished my master's degree in May, and
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I did this over the course of 3 years. When I was working full time, I was taking on fellowships, internships, continuing to volunteer, and it was my intention to be very to prioritize. I knew I had to prioritize work and school, and my social life very much came secondary. So if there's a goal that you want, what I would do is take that goal and break it down into smaller pieces so that it's easily digestible. You know that even if you're making small progress, you're at least making progress on your larger goal. And you know, the relationships you make along the way, whether it's going back to school, finding a new job, whatever it might be, those relationships are going to help you keep focused on your end goal.
That's awesome. Another thing in this space is boundaries, and being able to set boundaries and maintain boundaries in what you are willing, not willing to do. Channing, can you talk a little bit about boundaries?
I'm like, when you just mentioned boundaries, I'm like, what did I say in my
What did
prep?
you say?
Because
That was
I
so
feel like
brilliant.
I'm not keeping great boundaries right now.
Talked about boundaries and priorities, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, actually recently, I was having a conversation with my boss, and, he said to me something really clearly, like, your calendar should reflect your priorities. And I'm like, yeah, it should. That's so true. And I really enjoy people and learning from people. So I spent a lot, the first 3-4 months forming relationships. I think that's really important. Now we've moved into a space where the DEI strategy is done, the ESG strategy is done. We're moving into execution. I can't spend, 4 hours a day meeting and forming relationships and talking to people and listening to people. And that's really hard for me. I'm like, that is what I really enjoy doing. I really had to shift and kind of I had to put boundaries on myself for setting priorities and making sure that my time aligned with those priorities. And I'm also doing them in my life. So I had to really, the values helped me to say, okay, I can't feel bad about not being able to show up to this event or go to this birthday or call this person, every day. And I started to do the same thing. Got to align my time. Like, my personal calendar needs to reflect my values and my priorities. And I've been actively doing that and kind of working on where I felt like I needed to do it all. Like, that is not a boundary. It's like the opposite of keeping boundaries. And I've always been like that. Like, I have to, I host the Friendsgiving and I need to clean up, and I always want people to come visit me, which means I need to be present, and I go to this meeting and I go to that and I show up here, and you're not prioritizing yourself. So self-care is something that I've always struggled with because I get the analysis paralysis of like, is it the bathtub? Is it the walk? Is it the hike? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? I'm bad at meditation. I'm bad at yoga. It hurts. I don't know why I'm doing this. And so then I didn't do any of it. So I just picked one. I'm like, I'm just going to take a bath every Sunday. That's where I started, and I was so happy with that. That's it. No matter what happens on Sunday, that's what I do, and I don't bring my work laptop into my bedroom. I'm like, those were 2 things that I was able to do to set boundaries in my life so that I could keep my priorities on track. It's also people in my life. I'm like, if you are not pouring into me, whether it's an affirming way or being really honest, right? When you see me not keeping my boundaries or when I'm not living up to the person that I am, I need to have relationships with people who can actually tell me that, and from a good place, not a bad place. I don't need you to pacify me and make me feel better about myself. It's got to be real. And so I don't have the space for inauthenticity in my life. And so I've had to make decisions over time in different seasons to say, like, this relationship isn't serving me right now. And doing that was really hard, but it's a part of that, like, finding your voice work, because you can identify a person's not good for you in your life, but you may not ever voice it or do anything about it. And so taking the step is another part of keeping your own boundaries. And I think to show up for others, we have to show up for ourselves first.
Okay, I have a question for the audience. I'm going to take these off so I can see you. How many of you have had your career go exactly as you planned? Okay, then. That leads us to the topic of reinvention. Sometimes we choose to reinvent. We proactively make a decision, pivot, try something new. Sometimes that opportunity is given to us in a less wanted way. I want to talk about reinvention. My friend Maria, I know perhaps you're familiar with this song.
I had exactly the same thoughts of there's forced reinvention. And like I said earlier, have you ever woken up from a reorg and said, okay, I'm here, but where am I? Oh, I'm in facilities strategy now. I was over there in deployment. I had to take a test on AC and DC power, what they do. What's the difference? Okay.
That's find out. Okay.
If that's what it takes for credibility here. And I think there's a way to go about this, which is you do wake up and go, okay, is there something in me that's going to bring something special to this organization, to this job? And if so, like I said before, if your strength is there and it's being valued, and they need a strategic person here that's really going to take a high level view and say, there's something wrong with your 1,600 sites and here's what it is, and start working on it. That wasn't the case.
Okay.
That wasn't what they wanted. The strategic thinking was the purview of only one person, and he was at the top of the organization. He thought strategy fit on a bumper sticker, and that didn't quite gel with where I was going. So reinvent yourself again. I had a little bit of a pandemic in the middle there, but other than that, I started working for a startup in the edge cloud space because I was really intrigued by that, and learned a ton and really loved that and got passionate about that. And so, video, and you've been in every technology as well in the sector, and now I'm working at Solomon Cloud, and I love it. So reinventing, whether it was forced on you or whether you decided to reinvent yourself, it's just keep in mind what you want to bring to the table, what your strengths are in that. And as everybody has said across this thing, be authentic, right? It doesn't come across if you're pretending to like where you are. Well, that does come across, by the way, as I found out.
It's very clear. So talk about, so there's a force, you've got to pivot. So let's think about a promotion or an opportunity where now you get to be more. You get to reinvent, take the best of who you are and reinvent in that next role. How do you do that successfully? Like reinvent, build on, add to?
I guess, Tracy, I'd offer kind of what happened in my career. Up until the time I worked for AT&T Broadband, I was focused on large business customers. That was the nature of my work, like 3M, Microsoft. I mean, we're talking huge business customers. And when I went to work for AT&T Broadband, and then eventually Comcast, that's consumer markets. I was a consumer. I had that in common. I knew that, right? That I'm one. But I had to really kind of relearn the industry. I had to understand what consumer markets are like. I had to spend a lot of time relying on the expertise of others, learning from others, doing my own research so that I got to that point where I felt comfortable and confident with what I knew. And I mean, that was a turning point for me. And then I spent the rest of my career focused on consumer markets. But I think the key here is really admitting what you don't know, what you know and what you don't know. Some of what you do know, too, is always leverageable into where it is you're going. So I think you need to know that you go there with some strengths. You don't go there completely naked and unequipped. You do bring some strengths to that. But I think the acknowledging the expertise of others and getting those relationships, those partnerships, right, where someone wants to help guide you and help be a part of your success is vital to pivoting into a new role, even if you're kind of in the same place and going into a new role.
It's a lot of things converging. So you have some imposter syndrome. You have, self-advocacy you need to do. You need to build those connections all going in. But it's all the opportunity to reinvent. What do I want to be now?
Exactly.
It's a huge, huge opportunity. Charlene, anything you want to add on reinvention?
Well, I guess my experience coming from the entertainment industry to technology was a huge shift for me. It was a lot of asking a lot of questions, setting up meetings to understand the architecture. I didn't even know what architecture was before my first day. I probably didn't know what the architecture was for the first several months, but it was, it was making an effort to figure out where you belong, where your skill sets are, and how they align with your team and your team's goals. So ask the right questions, have conversations, yeah.
So I want to talk about resilience. Sometimes you have to have resilience during reinvention. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes resilience needs to happen when nothing is changing at all, and you desperately wish something would change. How do you navigate being resilient in a time where it's just not going the way you want, but you want to find a way to make it work?
So I want to talk one.
I know you want to talk about resilience, my friend.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about pearls and resiliency, and I wanted to get you all a gift. Because I don't know if you know this, but pearls are made by oysters who have something annoying in them. And what happens is they secrete this beautiful pearl outline.
Thank you.
I got one for me too.
Okay. Are we opening here?
So they secrete this thing, and what happens is they make this annoyance, this irritant, this parasite into a pearl, a gem, a treasure.
That's beautiful.
So what I think of resiliency, and I think we all know, you have to be resilient when your Tech It Out keynote speaker failed to fly in that day. But you turned around and you got this great other speaker on the spot who did fabulous, probably better. We all have those stories of something where you turned it around and made it into a gem. I think what I love about the oyster story, though, is she always knows she can do this. She always knows she can make a pearl, whether she's annoyed or or just simply injured, and is protecting herself. She knows she can do it, and that's what I think is more interesting about the resiliency, that it's not that you do it, it's that you know you can.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very kind.
You're welcome. I was in Hawaii.
They're beautiful.
That's very thoughtful, and we think about times we're facing those challenges. It can be as simple as an accessory to help remind us
That's right.
you've got this inside you. You can do it, and sometimes we need those external reminders like a Love Me file or like a bracelet to be like, I got this. Or your board of directors who you just call and like, I can't do it. You can. We've talked about this. You know how to do it, right? I've seen you do it. You
I
need
kind
those.
of want to know, is anybody up here wearing something that secretly gives them power?
I am.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am too.
I always do that when I speak.
Okay.
Can you reveal what it is?
Especially No, I'm wearing color. And for those of you who've known me, most of the time I'm in all black. And that is my preferred wardrobe, but it reminds me that I need to lean in and be engaged and be excited, and it gives me power. So I wear color. Channing, what do you have?
It's usually jewelry. I got this kind of box of jewelry. My grandmother passed away, so I typically have something on that's of hers. And it just, I don't know, it just makes me feel kind of like badass. Can I say that? I mean, you know, kind of like, yeah, like she was really badass, and it would be so cool for her to like be seeing me today, you know? So that's usually what it is, or it's always jewelry. So it's either her jewelry or it's something that I bought myself that was expensive on my own without the help of anyone, and definitely not a man. And that makes me really feel like I'm a boss. That's usually what I'm doing. So today it's my grandmother.
That's great. Anybody in the audience have tricks you want to share with us? There's not just the pearls up here. You all know stuff. Lipstick, Janice. Janice says lipstick. What else? What makes people feel powerful? Guys, you too. We know that you harbor the need to self-advocate, the need to feel powerful. What do? Power ties? No power ties in the audience. He's got one. Your class ring.
Good.
That's great. It's nice to know that everybody comes to the table with just a little bit more juice when they need it. I appreciate you guys sharing that.
Your cape. Your cape.
Yeah,
It's your cape. Your superhero cape.
I want to talk about, we talked about reinvention. We talked about resilience. Want to talk about how sometimes we cause other people to need to reinvent or be resilient. And that's because we're the disruptors. So a catalyst, being a catalyst for change. How do you find courage when you see there's an opportunity for change? How do you find that? How do you create an environment where change can be warmly received, even though you know you're rocking people's world?
Yeah, it's
Channing's
kind of my
smiling and
world.
nodding.
I'm like, yeah, kind of like a chief disruptor really is my job. I think especially when you are talking about and pushing topics that we have been socialized not to talk about and that are extremely polarizing and uncomfortable for people, whether we're talking about why you should use your pronouns in your email signature, or how every single person is biased, or how, if you're not a white man in our company, you're less probable to get a promotion. The data is revealing this, right? Diversity and inclusion is one of the few spaces where the data and then the conversation following doesn't match. They're like, I know this what the numbers say, but I don't think we have a problem. Or, I do hire women, they just don't want to work here. Or, there's just no black male engineers in the world. It's like, okay, but when we look at our revenue sheets and we look at our sales, when it shows we're not doing well in this market, we're more aggressive, or we're not doing
We trust the data.
Yeah, we trust
there.
the data then, right? And so I'm aware of this, and I know that I can either show up in a room and people are scared because the D&I person is there, or I can show up in the room and they're super excited and engaged because the D&I person is there, and I want to be the latter. So I really strive to, psychological safety is a real thing, and really make sure that people realize this isn't a finger pointing role. This is to push us to a place where every single person can feel like they thrive, and building equity in our systems benefits everyone, including our business and our customers, and it's important to our customers and to our employees. So, I think there's a mixture of ways to create that environment when you're going to disrupt. You've got to build the psychological safety, you got to build in some incentives, and you have to make sure that people realize they don't have to do it right all the time. There's so many times we don't want to have tough conversations about race or gender because we don't want to say the wrong thing. So if your chief diversity officer punishes you for saying the wrong thing, you're not going to talk about it. And so I'm call me with the questions. I know you have them. You want to know why you can't touch my hair, and I can talk to you about it, and it's okay. We can have the conversation, and it's just between us, and we can build that trusting relationship. So, I think that's really it, and it doesn't work all the time. Not everybody is rah, rah, rah that I'm here, but I hope that every day I'm showing up in a way that is we are trying to go from a hot mess to a mess. We're just trying to move the needle forward. We're trying to normalize talking about why it's important that we have multiple voices at the table. We're trying to normalize, not just hiring the same person that you always hire all the time. Trying to normalize why a global company that has a senior leadership team of all folks in the US is not a global company. And so the more, consistent communication, it becomes more normal and it becomes a lot easier.
How are you finding success so far? Can I ask that?
I'm like looking at Cindy.
Is the mess cooling off a little bit?
It is. I think
Okay.
that it is. Yeah, I think so. I think that, when you look at measures of success, especially in a corporation, it's always like those hard metrics. They're always looking at like the number of women and the number of people of color and the number of this and the number of that. And that's really important, but that's like the typical D&I stuff. That's like just the number of diverse, it's just diversity. It's just the percentage of people you have in a space. But it's really the environment around inclusion and belonging that really matters at the end of the day. And those things are a little bit more difficult to measure, and you have to be much more creative and really focusing on the equity. That's the piece that I really care about, is how many policies have we changed? How many practices have we pivoted to? How many leaders are introducing, thinking about equity in their promotion practices when they're hiring? Are they asking recruiters to seek out, to call WICT and say, like, we have a role, can we post in your group, or, can I share with your network? And so I think that we're getting there, but it does take time. I think I saw a partner at Korn Ferry said to me, it takes 10 years to transform an organization into a truly inclusive workplace.
Oh, that
10
doesn't
years.
surprise me.
10 years. So it takes time,
Okay. So 1,000-mile journey.
basically.
You got to start going, though.
Yeah,
You
we
got
gotta
to
start
start walking.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll even add on to that, and that's an incredible journey, and I'm so glad you're there. I think as a consultant now, I'm hired to create change at a pace with milestones and a plan next to it. So one of the things that I'm probably not well known for, but I'm trying to work on, and it's helping to get to that change, is one, recognizing that not everybody is on board, right? The person that hired us is not the people I'm working with.
Right.
And so, so being empathetic, or at least sympathetic with the fact that one person is closer to that change than this other one who's not adopting it. And trying to realign that person with, here's why it's going to be good for you in the end, here's what it does for the company, here's why this is it. But also, there's more of a, like I said, sort of an empathy coming out for this. I feel badly for them. It's hard. Change is hard. And as much as you communicate it and align it with the goals and try to get there, people are going to have their own journey through it, and they're going to have their own almost time of grieving and time of really a difficult passing through. And it doesn't happen to the group at every step of the way. So it's just really recognizing where people are in that journey. Some of them aren't going to get there, but some of them are. And I feel like the ones that are a little slower get left behind faster, and it's a shame.
Meeting people where they are is really important. You've got to meet people where they are. But in order to meet them, like, you've got to know where they are. So it's you have to seek out people. And you're right.
It's hard.
Yeah, it
Change
is.
is hard.
Kathy, Charlene, anything you guys want to add?
I would just say tapping into the resources around you to see if you can soften things for people, because change is hard. And I can think of some of the huge transformations we had with closing huge call centers and so forth, and going and working with finance, working with HR to change policies, to allow relocation funds for frontline employees, and to do some things that typically aren't done, really becomes important, so that people feel like they've got some choices versus they're forced into this change.
I think that's true. I think about sometimes we think about initiatives really from a business perspective, and we leave the humanity out.
Right.
And
Yep.
you have to bring the humanity into it for any kind of change to be successful. got a humanity in it all the time, but particularly around change management. Anything you want to add, or?
I have nothing to add,
She's
but
got
I
it.
was looking for your perspective, so thank you for sharing.
See? Proactive.
There you go.
Oh my. Okay, so we have just a couple minutes left before we're going to open it to questions from the floor. So if you have questions for these amazing ladies, please be thinking about them. But I want to ask each of you what most inspires you in a leader. And I'm just curious, because we didn't prep this one. I want to see if they're different depending on where you are on the journey. And it's completely, it may all be the same, but I think it'll be interesting to know. Charlene, we're going to start with you.
For me, a good leader is someone who can listen, and even though I'm at a lower level, you understand my perspective, you understand where I'm coming from, you understand my why. And being able to pivot our project or the work that I'm doing, whatever that might look like, based on my feedback, based on my capacity, based on the team's goals, I think that's really important.
I think of somebody, and this has changed over time, of course. I think the first two traits I looked for in a leader, because I had I was changing jobs, right? So I could pick and choose whomever I wanted based on their leadership style. And that became so much more important to me than salary or title or whatever. Like who I was going to work for and the kind of company that promotes those values to their leaders was going to be so much more important to me in this career journey than ever before. And so the first two traits I looked for was gratitude and humility. People who are grateful for their employees being here, people who are humble enough to know they don't know everything. They're a constant learner like I am, and we're going to learn from each other, and we're going to seek out some common ground, but be safe to disagree. So I feel like that was the two.
I'd say, and this is now in this stage that I'm in, what I really value, and I think our leader at CSG does this really well, is understanding the power and privilege that you have. Especially, I think, if, as a CEO or a leader with a lot of influence. And I think it goes in so many ways and directions in understanding how people listen to you and follow you in a room. So your words matter, what you say matters, how you open up the door for others, for other voices at the table really matters. So someone who can really understand the amount of power they hold and leverage it for good in the company, in their personal life, in the community, I think is extremely powerful. And it's a wonderful thing to watch when you encounter leaders who are able to navigate all of that power and channel it into extreme positivity, even in challenging decisions or when they're letting someone go, or there's a riff, or there's bad news to deliver, but to do it in a way that still is empathetic and human and people first, I think is really inspiring.
I really relate to what Channing has shared. I really look for two things: inspiration and authenticity. I think that those two components together are powerful. I think that they are instrumental to unleashing the power of an organization.
Okay, Kath, you get the last word from May.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. This is good. I want you to reflect on an amazingly successful career, and I have two questions for you. In the end, what did you worry about that just did not matter? That is something that will help everybody in this room. What didn't matter?
I think, especially in the beginning of my career, I worried about the numbers and organizations that are really focused on meeting the metrics. And I worried about that on a daily basis at work and at home. And that can be very consuming. And I think it was maybe mid-career when I recognized, the what's important, but the how you get results, working with and through others, that's the magic. That's the component that ensures long-term sustainable success. And, asking yourselves, were customers satisfied? Were employees elevated? Were partnerships strengthened? that really was my takeaway, was that the how I got things done was more meaningful and certainly had more power than meeting those metrics and worrying about them on a daily basis. I'd love to have that time back where I was stewing over the numbers.
At the dinner table with your kids?
Yes, of course. Talking to my pets, yes.
There you go.
Yes, they were not very helpful.
What mattered most when you look back?
For me, it really is the people. I don't really miss work. I don't miss the work, but I certainly miss the people. They motivated me and inspired me every day, and I just feel so grateful for the experiences I had in my career. But it was the people, for sure.
It was people. Thank you, ladies. Let's open it
Thank you.
up. Questions in the room? Okay.
As kind of the middle-aged white guy, if you will, of the group that I actually care about this organization, what we're doing. I'd be interested in, as a guy who finds himself more often than I care to in an environment where I'm like, ooh, why are we saying this right now? And where you're around other white guys who feel like it's okay to say these kind of things. Do you feel like you've got to go to stats, phrases, thoughts to enlighten and say, wait a minute, that's not okay to talk about? And I'd open it up to anybody.
I think Channing might be in that
Channing,
perfect
can you-
position to answer that.
I didn't want to exclude anybody. But
Yeah.
Channing,
Can you, so what he wants to know, for the people who can't hear and the people on the web stream, so we have a wonderful white gentleman who has offered, he's self-introduced that way, who wants to know, how do we talk about this? How do we engage? Where's too far? Is it okay to be talking about this? So.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I get this often, and people will be in, whether it's at the dinner table or out socially, and someone's saying something, and then, you're uncomfortable. You're like, that doesn't feel right. I don't know. Can I speak on this? So I'd say I would offer two things. I think this conversation around, gender or any diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, straight white men have a seat at the table. You have to be at the table, especially in, as holding positions of power and privilege. You have to be there. It's really important. And so we invite you to the table. It's really critical. I think the second thing is, and that also means that you have a voice in responding to these situations or questions or comments. I'd say the second thing is a tool that I like to teach is around, and I'll briefly describe it, calling in versus calling out. A lot of times, we have this, now we're in this cancel culture where someone says something that's offensive or wrong or discriminatory, and they're just canceled, and we kind of just silence them and that's it, but we're not really dealing with the root of the problem. So I always encourage people, depending on the situation and how comfortable you feel, I really like calling in. Someone says something, I'm like, well, tell me why you think that. Or what made you, what's your experience and why did you say that? Or where is that coming from? Or what have you seen that makes you think that? Or, I've seen this, I don't know if I agree, can we talk more about why that is? And that's really calling in, is just really digging into the statement and the comment and asking questions. And typically that really creates more space for dialogue and creates a common understanding. Sometimes there are situations in which you do have to call someone out, and that doesn't always have to be in public. You can pull someone aside after a comment made you feel uncomfortable and say, I didn't appreciate what you said. I thought it was discriminatory. It made me uncomfortable. And as a white man, you can be uncomfortable by a comment, even if it's not directed toward you. And I think we have a role to say and call that out. And sometimes that can be in a group setting, and that can be in private. And so I think knowing that we're equipped with being able to do that, even if we don't always know the right thing to say, but I think it's all of our roles as humans, once we really understand that certain behaviors, whether they're micro behaviors or explicit behaviors, do need to be addressed, because if we don't address them, they won't be rectified. Sure.
Okay, that was great.
So this afternoon is going to get, so first and foremost, thank you for showing up and being so helpful. You have given so many helpful tactics and tips. I'm going to ask for one other tip, and that is, you talked about big resilience, and interested in tips for immediate resilience, like when you really have said the stupidest thing, because it's been sitting with you all day, or spilled the water, or whatever. How do you shake it off?
I actually took a coaching class where we were taught PQ reps. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So it's really a way of clearing your head out of these thought distortions. What I liked about it is I'm not a good meditator either. So it's 5 minutes, right, of just honing in on, I had listened to my fish tank, honing in on listening to the fish tank and clearing your head out of every one of those things that go in that says, I bet I've made a stupid statement. I'll bet that's going well. I'll bet it's viral. I'll bet 100 million people have seen it now on YouTube and everywhere else, right? Like, that's what builds. And so stopping and labeling it and saying, that's not true. That's not true about me. I'm not stupid. Yeah, I might have said something stupid, but that's not it. And I do this, like, I almost do this on every transition. Every time I transition from one meeting to another, every time, I didn't get to do it here, but I was gonna go to the bathroom and try to, you know, it's just a good way of wiping that out and giving yourself the clean slate to move forward.
I knew you could help. Thank you.
I'm sure other people have.
Any other
Yeah.
graceful transitions that you can offer? How do you help
I think that's good.
we'll cover in a moment?
I'm gonna do what she does.
She's going to take that pearl
There you go.
forward. I think I'll just share that sometimes just acknowledging that you did that takes all the pressure off.
Yeah.
Say, you know what? That was my bad, my mistake. I didn't mean to do that. And saying it out loud immediately deflates the pressure. And if your intention was not there, why not just own up? We all so respect people when they own up to something. Why not just let yourself off the hook? I blew that enormously, but I'm going to do better next. Give yourself a break. Everybody else is so less critical of you than you are. I mean, the things that I will say to myself in my head, I can't imagine ever saying anything to anybody else. You gotta zip that critic that's really foul-mouthed and inappropriate.
Mine smokes.
Smoked.
My inner critic. I see he smokes. It's a he, too.
There's,
Go ahead.
So I'm a mom of a 14-year-old that is self-deprecating all the time. You know, doesn't think she's good, thinks that she's not pretty, blah, blah, blah. And I try and tell her, you know, you're beautiful, you're intelligent, but you're my mom. You have to say that. So how do you help the younger generation learn to self-advocate, to talk to themselves in a positive manner?
So one trick I actually learned from therapy when I was having similar negative thoughts, my therapist told me to write down on a few Post-it notes things that I really liked about myself. You have a nice laugh. You can make people smile, whatever it might be. You have great legs, whatever you want it to be. Put it on your mirror and say it out loud to yourself every single morning. And it took time, but after about 4 to 6 months, I started seeing a more positive image of myself, both internally and externally. I don't know if she's actually going to do that because it's a 14-year-old girl, but I'm hoping that could possibly help. It certainly helped me.
Maybe if the idea doesn't come from me.
Sure.
Yeah, I was
Sure.
gonna say,
Absolutely.
if you could get her peers to tell her to do that, or should said somebody else that tried it, that would be, the moms.
I also think if you can find a way to have other adults in her life that she can speak with and that can reinforce some confidence in her and maybe some inspiration too is great. I know with my daughters, I always made sure that they had another adult or two, whether it came from school or a music teacher, whatever, in their lives to let them know, hey, this is what my daughter is struggling with. If you could just take some extra time with her and get to know her better and boost her up a bit, that could be helpful.
Cousins and aunts, too.
Yeah, I think too, like identifying what it is that she's really good at or that brings her joy, and then having her around other people that also are good at that thing and it brings them joy. Because honestly, like I'm not a parent, but kids are mean. And like there's like a new breed
They are
of
mean.
kid. And like I just didn't experience this when I was a child. That between I think social media and social bullying and the images that we're exposed to, even as adults, images of women, it's really challenging. And I think once you're around people that enjoy some of the same things or like to talk about some of the same things, you don't have to like adjust yourself because like, oh, that person likes what I like too. We can just talk about what we like. It's not about what I look like or trying to fit in with a different group. These are my people. So finding your people is really important. And I think especially for teenagers, because we're just being bombarded with images that just don't look anything like ourselves. And like that's what we're supposed to be like. It's like, no, it's not.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, in the middle, I can't, okay, I'm sorry, you're right under the spotlight.
No worries. This is to everybody on the panel. What's one book that has changed your trajectory or your life throughout your career?
Oh, Kathy's ready.
Well, I'm a big Brene Brown fan. Daring Greatly. I read it probably 5 times. It's a great book, and all of her books are like that. They're very uplifting.
Oh my gosh, this is so hard for me. I'm like, Homegoing, I read recently. It became one of my favorite books after reading that. It was a really powerfully grounding story. I think when I think about my ancestry and heritage, like this, how resilient I think like people of the African diaspora are. So that was really powerful for me to read. And then Elie Wiesel is probably my favorite author, so I'll read anything. But I think there are sometimes like stories that come along that are fiction, but they're so close to reality that they're extremely moving and powerful. I just finished The Vanishing Half, and it just like rocked my whole world. So that's another one to add to your list. None of these are like for professional life. These are just for like life.
I can't think of one.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time too. I can't say I've read a lot of self-help or, those types of nonfiction books. I have read a lot of philosophy. My undergrad minor and my master's are in ethics. So I've read a lot of philosophy books, and those books help drive me in the decisions I make every day.
I'll share, I don't know that this has changed my career, but I read recently a book called The Premonition by Michael Lewis, and it's about leadership during COVID and between administrations, the different decisions made, so why California took such a dramatically different path than New York, and it's just fascinating to see what leaders rose, what situation enabled some to be heard and others not to be heard. And what I take away from that now is I'm in a role around embedding sustainability in the business, and so that's disruptive to people. But there are some voices that are going to be heard. There's other voices that aren't going to be. And how do you get those voices that desperately need to be heard floated to the top? And this book was just fascinating in that regard. So I'm looking at things through a different lens right now. Okay, I think there's one more.
Have you ever received feedback that you feel didn't really fit who you are? Like you're really caught off guard with it. You're like, where did this come from? I've never heard this before. Any feedback that you received that you're just like,
Get out.
not me?
Get out.
Yes.
So her question is, have you ever received feedback that just did not feel
Resonate, yeah.
like that was,
Yeah,
Do with it.
and what do you do with it? So,
I would run. I think that kind of disconnect is where you know you are not fitting in that organization, and there's probably very little you can do about it.
Can you say a little bit more about that, my friend?
Okay. I was told I wasn't strategic enough or whatever in this organization. And so I found myself really trying to change and not, I relinquished that role to somebody else and the leader of the organization. And I became somebody that was very Spock-like in very logical and very, I'm just going to march through this because I'm a smart person. I can get through this. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work harder. They're not valuing the gift that you bring. And so they're never gonna, because you're going to start hiding it.
That's good. Yes, I have experienced that. And what I used to do, and sometimes still do, is like obsess over it.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing to do. Like you hold on to it and you carry it like it's your newborn baby. And I have done that over and over and over again. I think you have to parse out the gifts, right? Feedback is a gift, so you got to keep the gifts, but you really have to release the piece that has nothing, it's like personal or about that person, has nothing to do with you or how you approached a task or an initiative or a project or your work, and realize like sometimes people aren't going to like your style or your approach, but that doesn't mean you're not effective. Maybe they just don't like it. And so as much as it's, people can dish it out, you've got to realize like, okay, like thanks, but no thanks. I don't have to receive that gift. You can keep that. That is for you. That is not for me.
You're going to wait for the door bandit.
Yeah,
There you go.
I didn't ask for that. Yeah.
Okay, I think we are well and truly tapped of our pearls.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, this was just phenomenal. Tracy, what an amazing panel. We are so grateful to you for putting that together for us. And on a personal note, congratulations on being inducted to the Cable Pioneers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we will be watching and cheering you on October 4th. So congratulations, Tracy. Thank you to our amazing women panelists. Just an amazing conversation today. Thank you for blessing us with all of your pearls of wisdom. And Maria, thank you for blessing them with pearls. It's just
I
wonderful.
felt like Oprah.
Yes, you get a pearls. You get a pearls.
One of those pearls.
I love that. All right, and I know each and every one of you has had an important and very impactful, meaningful conversation today that will impact everyone in this room and everyone watching live today. So thank you so much for being part of our WICT program. All right, thank you for joining us today, everyone. What a joy to be together again. What was your favorite word of wisdom today? Hashtag that at hashtag WICTRM25th or whatever we're using today. You can also hashtag WICTRM. We look forward to another incredible 25 years of our chapter. So don't forget to mark your calendars for Tech It Out on November 11th at Infinity Park. We're really excited to bring that back to you live and virtual this year. It's going to be incredible. We have some great keynote speakers, tech talks for you, so please join us again on November 11th. And we do have some parting gifts for our wonderful panelists and moderator, Tracy. So thank you again, ladies. Thank you for a wonderful afternoon of memories, pearls, and so much more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out. It's nice to see faces again. Okay.
Thank you for these.
Maria,
That was
thank
so
you.
kind. Thank you so much.